debate. We're looking at that alleged plot that was uncovered Tuesday in the U.S. Against an Iranian American accused of trying to blow up the Saudi ambassador to Washington. A lot of questions. And with us to help us answer some of those questions, Nushabeh Amiri of RusOnline.com, Iranian writer and dissident Ramin Paran from the Woodrow Wilson Center in Washington, Michael Adler, and Christopher Dickey of Newsweek and The Daily Beast. We were talking before the break about whether or not it was an order from the top. Certainly there's the question as well of the motive. Now, in an April 2008 U.S. diplomatic cable revealed by whistleblowing website WikiLeaks last year, the Saudi ambassador, Adel Al-Jubeir, recalled the king's frequent exhortations to the U.S. to attack Iran and so to put an end to its nuclear weapons program. Quote, "He told you to cut off the head of the snake," he recalled. So I suppose it's not stating the obvious if you say, Christopher Dickey, that there's no love lost between Tehran and Riyadh.
No, there isn't, and they're in ferocious competition for the future of basically the Muslim world, and also for the future of the oil business. So I think there's no love lost, and there's a lot of reasons that they might want to do damage to each other. Question I have is how killing Adel Jubeir in a Washington restaurant would help Iran. I mean, he's not a very big fish. He's not even a royal. He's not even a prince. So, although he is purported to be close to King Abdullah, the Saudi king, I don't really see why he would be the target and why the location would be that location. It doesn't really square for me.
Ramin Paran?
Well, as you just said, and as we were talking just prior to the panel, he's the one who actually pronounced that phrase on behalf of King Abdullah, just cut off the head of the snake. So imagine the Revolutionary Guard, and I will come back to this point in a moment. Imagine the Revolutionary Guard officers, the Al-Quds officers, the amount of testosterone, the amount of boost, moral boost that they would get, knowing that they have cut off the head of this. Does
this mean we can blame WikiLeaks for this whole thing? Because it was their cable that revealed this, right?
Yes, that they have just cut off the head of the Saudi snake in Washington. Just go back to Khomeini's political testament. Just go back to Khomeini's.
But what about the timing? Why do this now? Why wouldn't it just rally the entire world against the regime? Why would they want to do it?
Because they are burning, for instance, the Islamic Republic's flags in Syria every Friday. Because Syria represents a huge investment for the Revolutionary Guard. Because Syria means the logistic route to Hezbollah,
which is rally the whole world against you. It doesn't make sense.
No, what is important for Khamenei in the dire situation in which he is now, particularly since 2009 and the so-called Green Revolution.
He's put a lid on that Green Revolution, though.
He is the pillar of his survival, the backbone of his survival, and his survivability is the Revolutionary Guard, and the backbone of the Revolutionary Guard is the Al-Quds. He must maintain the morale of his troop. He cannot just take the blows and say nothing. He cannot just take the blow, the huge blow of Imad Mughniya being terminated 3 years ago and do nothing.
But not by the Saudis.
The Saudis represent, as I said, just go back to Khomeini's communique after the acceptance of Resolution 598 or his political testament. The Saudis represent for Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic regime, and his heirs, the absolute incarnation of what they call the American Islam, the Islam of the rich. This is an old infighting within the thing, but Khomeini's recommendation was just Khomeini's recommendation, stated recommendation was cut off their head.
Nushabeh Amiri.
Yeah, because Khomeini, I'd like to add to what Mr. Parham said. Khomeini, he considers himself as the leader of Islam and Shiites. That's why it's a rival there, which is about how to deal with the leadership of Islam.
All right, well, in the streets of Tehran, on camera, reactions to these allegations range from outrage to, well, I'm staying out of it, please.
This is a plot by the Zionists and Saudi Arabia.
This is political trickery. In any case, we've had problems with the US since the revolution. Naturally, we expect nothing but tricks like this. We have to be prepared to deal with these issues.
All right, diplomatically put. Iran, no stranger to carrying out bombings and assassinations abroad, the most famous being the 1991 assassination of the Shah's last prime minister, the exiled Shapur Bakhtiar, knifed in his home in the Paris suburbs along with his secretary. Now, at the same time, there was the 1994 bombing of a Buenos Aires synagogue. And on that point, many experts believe that it's not beyond the current regime to keep on carrying out these assassinations abroad.
Iran has undertaken brazen operations before, however, and the current defense minister of Iran, Ahmed Vahidi, was the man implicated as the mastermind of the 1994 bombing in Buenos Aires. There's actually an Interpol red notice put out to arrest Iran's defense minister.
Again, Michael Adler, do the likes of Ahmed Vahidi, the defense minister, want to draw attention to what's now, I guess, history?
Well, linking to the previous discussion, I think if you look at this alleged attempted attack from Washington, it makes no sense at all. The Iranians have been involved in a long-standing dispute over their nuclear program with the United States. There's been talk of a military attack by the United States or Israel for 6-7 years now. So it would make no sense for them to do an attack like this where they could give the United States or Israel a reason to attack them. But as the speakers brought out, if you look at it from Iran, there is a logic for doing something like this. There have been assassinations of their nuclear scientists. So on Iranian soil, there have been assassinations carried out. The Saudis are projecting power. They've sent troops to Bahrain, which is almost a real slap in the face to Iran, because Iran considers Bahrain to be its territory or at least its backyard. And of course, there are the problems with Syria and the general problems with the Arab Spring. So if they do an attack in the United States and they can do a symbolic decapitation of Saudi Arabia, and it also would be a way of telling the United States, you think you can do attacks on our territory, guess what, we can do attacks on your territory also. So once again, viewed from Washington, this makes no sense at all. Viewed from Tehran, there might be the sort of logic of making a point and getting even.
Christopher Dickey?
Well, you know, the word decapitation is an interesting one. If you read the complaint, if you read the legal papers that were filed in this case, what was initially discussed was kidnapping Adel Jubeir. Mm-hmm. Now, why would you kidnap him? Well, one reason you might kidnap him would be to behead him. Mm-hmm. I mean, literally behead him. There's no other particular reason. They're not going to ransom the Saudi ambassador. They're not going to. Why would they kidnap him? It's just one of those passing lines in the legal complaint that you sort of look at now and go, maybe.
But there is also, as we just said, as we just mentioned, there is a pattern of overseas operations by the Al-Quds. I mean, going all the way to Argentina and committing something there. And there is also, you shouldn't forget, you shouldn't underestimate the fact that, two facts quickly. Imad Moghnier used to have dinner at Khamenei's place when he used to go back to Iran. He was almost his son.
Maybe we should explain who Imad Moghnier is.
Please.
He was the head of operations, especially terrorist operations for Hezbollah in Lebanon. But he was very, very close to the Quds Force. He was essentially a creation of the Quds Force.
Yes. And the second point is that go all the way back to 1979. Go all the way back to hostage taking. And then the military barracks of the US Marines and the French Marines in Lebanon. And then all that we said, you know, Argentina, the assassination of Iranian dissident here in France, in Germany, the Al-Khobar. When you take all of this into account, you see that there has never been, in 32 years, multilateral, severe response to the Iranian regime. They just have this feeling of impunity.
All right,
they just think that they can do anything they want.
But hang on, you mentioned a moment ago the context of what's going on today. You mentioned Syria, where
Iranian flags have been burned.
Where Iranian flags have been burned Michael Adler a moment ago mentioning Bahrain. And you get the sense that this is, again, playing out at a time when in the middle between Iran and Saudi Arabia, there is a Bahrain where the Saudis, let's not forget, sent in tanks to prop up a minority Sunni regime. And again, Nushabeh Amiri, my question is, in this situation, where both Saudi Arabia and Iran conservative regimes, do they want to bring things to a head and their differences out in the open at this time?
You know, I really can't say that absolutely, because we don't have enough information. But the thing that I know that the two regimes, they are in a difficult situation. And do not forget that the Islamic Republic, they have started killing ordinary people in Europe, in France. They killed a singer in France. It doesn't mean that they have a very special reason for doing all sorts of things. And if you, as Mr. Parham said, I think the Western countries, they don't take it serious, because imagine that if they had managed to do that, what would be the result? They would make lots of fear inside, in the heart of the Western countries. It means that we can do that, and that would create lots of fear. Since I don't have the story and what is going on behind this stage.
You know, I think we ought to step back from this for a second, though, and look at one of the reasons for the skepticism that exists in the United States. And you can sum it up in one word: Iraq. People are very, very worried in the United States that this is some kind of cooked-up incident, that this is some kind of prelude to war. Now, you'd have to say, we've been talking about the Iranians couldn't be that crazy. Well, you'd think that the Obama administration could not be so crazy as to get itself directly or indirectly involved in yet another war in the Muslim world. But that doesn't mean that politically in the United States there are not a lot of people concerned about that. And it's one reason that this is being addressed with so much skepticism. You've got, on the one hand, you've got Iran watchers, terrorism watchers who say this isn't really exactly the way the Quds Force has worked in the past, at least not in the United States. And on the other hand, you've got people who just don't trust the American government at all. And they say, this is a prelude to war. Already the Israelis are on the verge of attacking Iran. This is just another little piece of the puzzle that's being put together. At the end of the day, you have war with Iran. That is something people are really afraid of.
All right, let's bring in Michael Adler on this briefly.
If I may, that said, I think you're seeing very clearly in the U.S. reaction so far, there's no hint of military action or using this as an effort to go in that direction. Instead, the administration, Hillary Clinton said it very clearly, the reaction is that there's going to be an effort to isolate Iran further, to get more nations to join and putting more pressure on Iran. So in a sense, the U.S. reaction has been to reinforce its policy. Now, if you think that they would concoct something like this just to reinforce their policy, I think the whole rocambulesque nature of the charges against this plot, even Hillary Clinton said we couldn't make this one up. So two things. One, I think if they were going to have a Gulf of Tonkin type moment, they would have chosen something a little bit more simple and believable. And the second thing is that there's no hint that this is going to lead to even moves towards military action. It's going to reinforce current American policy. And one more note is that, if anything, the United States has been very concerned about an accidental outbreak of war. And there have been a lot of
I'm going to interrupt you, Michael Adler, sure, because what you're saying is actually key to what breaking news we have coming in. The wording is very careful out of Washington. The U.S. President Barack Obama has just spoken. Let's take a listen.
We also know that he had direct links, was paid by and directed by individuals in the Iranian government. This plot was not simply directed at the United States of America. This is a plot that was directed against the Saudi ambassador. And I think that what you're going to see is folks throughout the Middle East region questioning their ability to work effectively with Iran.
Interesting, and this hammers home Michael Adler's point. He's talking there about individuals inside the Iranian government, the U.S. president. He's not saying this is an order that comes from the supreme leader.
Yeah, and let me say, I don't think that this is a prelude to war on the part of the Obama administration, but in the political environment that exists in the United States, that's a major concern.
All right, but what is for certain, and everyone can agree on this, is based on what the U.S. Vice President said on Wednesday, which is that he wants to really rally support against which is
China. The U.S. policy. The essence of the U.S. policy is to isolate Iran and to get other countries to join in an international effort to put pressure on Iran. And that effort is designed to get it to the negotiating table. If the Iranians today said, we're ready to talk, we're ready to make concessions, do things you want to increase confidence that we don't seek a nuclear weapon, the United States would jump on it. So rather than there being a mood of confrontation from Washington, there's this continued effort to apply pressure in order to get to negotiations. And I don't think that's changed because of this.
All right. Christopher Dickey mentioned Europe. There's also Saudi Arabia itself. The former State Department spokesperson, P.J. Crowley, penning an opinion piece in The Guardian on Wednesday, where he said the real leverage may rest with Saudi Arabia, with a powerful commercial weapon it can use with an array of countries that have hedged their dealings with Iran in the past. For example, Saudi Arabia can have a blunt conversation with an emerging power like China. Call it Saudi Arabia's with us or against us moment. Business as usual is no longer an acceptable answer. Christopher Dickey, do you agree?
Well, I think that may actually be at the very core of this confrontation. We were talking about this a little bit earlier when we were off the air. The Saudis are competing with the Iranians all over the world for oil markets, especially in emerging countries. And it's a ruthless competition. And it's a matter of survival for Iran because it has a much bigger population, it has less oil, it's dependent on a high price of oil, it needs those long-term contracts because its economy is in disastrous shape, and it will be in an even more disastrous shape if it becomes even more isolated from Europe. From its major trading partners like Germany.
And will Saudi Arabia play ball? I guess that's going to have to be for another time because we're out of time. But Christopher Dickey, Nushabeh Amiri, Ramin Paran, and Michael Adler in Washington, thank you for being with us. And thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's Time for Business, presented by Catherine Nicholson.